Hello, I'm Tom Bleasdale, and today I'm going to be talking about anxiety. Now, anxiety related to chronic illness is completely normal, and sadly it does strike most people who do have chronic illnesses. Most of us end up feeling very, very anxious about various aspects of our lives a lot of the time, and we can often end up just feeling permanently anxious about nothing in particular, just because we're permanently ill. We're always feeling unwell, and anxiety can just sit there, and we may not be able to define what's causing the anxiety, but really the anxiety is just existing alongside the symptoms, and it's something we can't always escape. One of the worst things about anxiety is you can't think your way out of it using logic. As illogical as anxiety may be, you can't say to yourself, oh, that doesn't make sense, I'm going to refuse to feel anxious. It just doesn't work like that, because the limbic system, the part of the brain that controls anxiety, doesn't respond to logic. It responds to feelings and emotions, and we have to deal with that anxiety by trying to acknowledge it and then just pushing through it and accepting it to a degree. It's a horrible, horrible thing to have to live with. It's debilitating. It can stop you doing things in life and stop you trying things and stop you pushing yourself. And what's so difficult about it can be the complete incomprehensibility of it. Sometimes you just know it doesn't make any sense to be anxious, but anxiety is there. Why? It's, even though you've pushed through it so many times before, it's kind of like being punched in the face. It's like, just because you've been punched in the face 50 times doesn't make the 51st punch feel any less painful. It doesn't make it any easier to deal with. You know it's coming, you know you're going to deal with it, but it damn well hurts, and you don't want to have to deal with it. But it's there, and that is the cruel twist of anxiety, is logic won't get rid of it. And I'm a very logical kind of person, because of the way my brain is, and trying to think my way through things is usually what I do. So I don't deal well with anxiety, and I've always suffered from anxiety since I was a child. Since I've had this illness, it has increased tremendously. Most of my anxiety centres around the worsening of my health, because I have deteriorated significantly over the past few years. Since I've had this illness, I can really say I've got a lot physically worse. I'm a lot weaker, I'm in a lot more pain. I struggle to recover from things far more than I used to. I used to be able to do things physically even with the illness, which now I wouldn't even consider trying. And the anxiety is there about the fear of the future, I suppose. It's getting worse, and I'm anxious about what the next week, what the next month, what the next year will bring for me in way of symptoms. For example, a few years ago I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, and that has been caused by the long-term fibromyalgia, and being ill for so long, it's developed as a result of that. And last year it caused me to nearly bleed to death internally. I lost 50% of my blood. Thank God for the NHS for saving my life once again. So yeah, fear of the future with an illness like this is completely natural. For me, it's getting worse. For most people, it's getting worse. Some people are lucky and get a cure, but very, very few. And for those of us who are getting progressively worse and worse and worse, it's scary. It's very scary, because there's nothing we can do about it. And when you hear people talking about, the best years of your life are always yet to come, we look at that and those people and say, yeah, maybe for you, not for us. We've had our best years, they've gone. And that's not always entirely true. Some people get lucky in some ways, and I'm still working on trying to get lucky in some ways. I'm not giving up, but good times are still ahead, but also there's a hell of a lot of bad times that we've got to face, that if we were healthy we wouldn't have to. And people complain about the problems of their bodies as they get older, just from getting older. When you've got a chronic illness on top of that, it's very, very frustrating and difficult to deal with. You can't talk to those people and say, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, only it's 100 times worse for me, because they don't want to hear that. They just want reassurance and a bit of sympathy. They don't want anyone saying, oh yeah, I know what that's like, I have to deal with it every day, all the time. No one wants to hear that welcome to my world speech. They don't want to hear that. That will push people away faster than anything. So we have to be careful and bite our tongues a lot around friends who aren't ill and relatives who aren't ill and don't understand what it's like. And they say these things in front of us without thinking, because they don't like to think of us as ill, and they don't like to think of us as people they have to tread on eggshells around. So, you know, they say these things, and it's up to us to acknowledge that that's for them, that's normal for them. The anxiety will always be there, the anxiety of the future, the anxiety of possibly in the future having to look after myself. I'm not sure how well I'll cope with that. And it's that having an illness like this, it's scary. You have to take care of things. You have to make sure you have supplies, and you have to make sure that you have good stocks of your medication and good routes of supplies for things that you need. And having a support network is important, and sometimes we don't have much of a support network. Mine is very, very small. I have maybe 3 or 4 people that I can call on who are nearby who will help me out in an emergency. But for the most part, you know, I'm kind of on my own, but I'm lucky to have those few people. I know that, and I do appreciate them. They know that too. I make it clear to them on a frequent basis that I appreciate them. But dealing with anxiety that goes along with a chronic illness, it's something we can't get away from. We just have to live with it, learn to live with it, and just battle through it, and do our best to try and stay calm, and not let the anxiety escalate to begin with. As soon as we start to get a little bit anxious, we have to try and acknowledge it and take care of it there and then, before it gets out of hand and causes a complete meltdown or panic attack or emotional breakdown. Whatever way you let it out, it's different for all of us. For me, it's all 3 of those, sometimes all at once. Not fun, and it's always awful trying not to feel ashamed afterwards. We shouldn't feel ashamed of having freakouts or meltdowns. We have a lot to cope with, we really do. So we shouldn't feel bad about ourselves if we struggle to cope sometimes. It's perfectly normal. The important thing to remember is we've got through it, and once you get through it, then that's something to, you know, hold on to. And that's something that every time I do get anxious and have bouts of anxiety, I tell myself, you know, it's going to go on for a while, but you will get through it. You always do get through it. Thinking it won't get it to go away, you just got to just take your time, and it will go away eventually. So yeah, that's anxiety and chronic illness. Hope this has been useful in some way. Even if it's just to know that you're not alone. Anxiety with conditions like this are very, very normal.